Shrimad's divine grace, founder of ISKCON, Abhay Charnaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Granthara Shrimadbhagavatam ki. Their most merciful Lordship, Shri Shrikunja Bihari ki jai, Shri Jagannath, Shri Baladev Mai Subhadra ki, Shri Nathaji, Shri Balagopal ki jai, Shri Gaunitai ki jai, Nitai Go Prema. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the Lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudhiraya.
Tato Jayamudhiraya.
Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nasta Prayeshu Bhadreshu.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke
Bhagavati Uttama Sloke
Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistaki.
Bhakti Bhagavati Naitiki.
So this page is turned to text 28.
29.
29. I thought you said 6. Okay. We are reading today from Canto 1, Bhagavatam, chapter 13, text number 29. Yeah, there is a clipboard. Evam Raja
Raja
Vidurananujena
Viduranujena
Evam Raja Vidurananujena
Evam Raja Vidurena Anujena
Prajna
Prajna
Chakshu Bodhita Ajamida
Jamida
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Ajamida
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida
Chitva
Chitva
Sveshu
Veshu
Sneha
Sneha
Pasan
Pasan
Radrimno
Radhimno
Chitva Sveshu Sneha Pasan Radrimno
Veshu Sneha Pasan Radhimno
Nishchakrama Bratrir
Bhratri
Sandarsitadva
Sandarsitatva
Nichakrama Bratrir Sandarsitadva
Nishchakrama Bhratri Sandarsitatva
Evam Rajavidurana
Evam Raja Vidurena Nujena
Evam Rajavidurana Nujena
Evam Raja Vidurena Nujena
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida
Prajna Chakshu Bodhita Jamida
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida
Prajna Chakshu Bodhita Jamida
Chidvas Veshu Sneha Paschandradimno
Chitvasvesu Sneha Pasandradimno
Chidvas Veshu Sneha Pasandradimno
Chitvasvesu Sneha Pasandradimno
Nishchakra Krama Bratrir Sandarsitadva
Nishchakrama Bhratri Sandarsitatva
Nishchakrama Bratrir Sandarsitadva
Nishchakrama Evam Raja Vidurena Nujena
Evam Rajavidurena Narujena
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida
Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida
Chitvasvesu Sneha Pasandradimno
Chitvas Veshu Sneha Pasandradimno
Nishchakrama Bhratri Sandarsitatva
Nishchakrama Brattir Sandarsitadva Evam Rajavidurana Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida Chitvas Veshu Sneha Paschandadimno Nishchakrama Bratrir Sandarsitadva Evam Rajavidurana Prajna Chakshur Bodhita Jamida Chidvas Veshu Sneha Pasandrabdino Nishchakrama Bratrir Sandarsitadva Evam
Evam
Thus
Thus
Raja
Raja
King Dhritarashtra
Dhritarashtra
Vidurena Anujena
Vidurena Nujena
by his younger brother
by his younger brother
Vidura
Vidura
by his younger brother Vidura. There we go. Prajna,
Prajna
introspective knowledge.
Introspective knowledge
Chakshu,
Chakshu
eyes.
Eyes
Bodhita,
Bodhita
being understood.
Being
Ajamida,
Ajamida,
Dhritarashtra, scion of the family of Ajamida.
Dhritarashtra, sign of the family of Ajamida.
Chitva,
Chitva,
by breaking.
by breaking.
Veshu,
Veshu,
regarding kinsmen.
regarding kinsmen.
Sneha pashan,
Sneha pashan,
strong network of affection.
strong network of affection.
Dradivna,
Radhivna,
because of steadfastness.
because of steadfast.
Nischakrama,
Nischakrama,
get out.
got out.
Bhratri,
Bhratru,
by his brother.
by his brother.
Sandarsita,
Sandarsita,
direction to.
Shindu,
Adva, the path of liberation.
the path of liberation.
Evam Rajavidurananujaina Pragna Chakshirabodhita Ajamida Chitvas Veshu Sneha Paschandra Dimno Nishchakrama Bratrir Sandarsitadva. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace of Acharnadavinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Maharaj Dhritarashtra, thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamida, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus, he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation as directed by his young brother, Vidura. Please repeat. Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra,
Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra,
the scion of the family of Ajamida,
the sign of the family of the Ajamida,
firmly convinced by introspective knowledge,
firmly convinced by the introspective knowledge,
prajna,
pragna,
broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination.
by his resolute determination.
Thus he immediately left home
Thus he immediately left home
to set out on the path of liberation,
to set out on the path of liberation,
as directed by his younger brother Vidura.
as directed by his younger brother Vidura.
Thus Maharaj Dhritarashtra, the scion of the family of Ajamida, firmly convinced by introspective knowledge, prajna, broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Thus he immediately left home to set out on the path of liberation, as directed by his younger brother Vidura. Purport. Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great preacher of the principles of Shrimadbhagavatam, has stressed the importance of association with sadhus, pure devotees of the Lord. He said that even by a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can achieve all perfection. We're not ashamed to admit that this fact was experienced in our practical life. Were we not favored by His Divine Grace, Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, by our first meeting for a few moments only, it would have been impossible for us to accept this mighty task of describing Srimad Bhagavatam in English. Without seeing him at that opportune moment, we could have become a very great business magnate, but never would we have been able to walk the path of liberation and be engaged in the factual service of the Lord under instructions of His divine grace. And here is another practical example by the action of Vidura's association with Dhritarashtra. Maharaj Dhritarashtra was tightly bound in a network of material affinities related to politics, economy, and family attachment, and he did everything in his power to achieve so-called success in his planned projects. But He was frustrated from the beginning to the end, so far as his material activities were concerned. And yet, despite his life of failure, he achieved the greatest of all success in self-realization by the forceful instructions of a pure devotee of the Lord, who is the typical emblem of a sadhu. The scriptures enjoin, therefore, that one should associate with sadhus only, rejecting all other kinds of association, and by doing so one will have ample opportunity to hear the sadhus, who can cut to pieces the bonds of illusory affection in the material world. It is a fact that the material world is a great illusion, because everything appears to be a tangible reality, but at the next moment evaporates like the dashing foam of the sea or a cloud in the sky. A cloud in the sky undoubtedly appears to be a reality because it rains, and due to rains, so many temporary green things appear. But in the ultimate issue, everything disappears, namely the cloud, rain, and green vegetation, all in due course. But the sky remains, and the varieties of sky or luminaries also remain forever. Similarly, the absolute truth, which is compared to the sky, remains eternally. And the temporary cloud-like illusion comes and goes away. Foolish living beings are attracted by the temporary cloud, but intelligent men are more concerned with the eternal sky, with all its variegatedness. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshusun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Comparison is being made here with a temporary cloud, comparing the whole material stage, a temporary cloud. And it's a cloud that we are under the illusion of, believing that this illusion of the material energy has a means for us to somehow enjoy it. I was looking, though, while reading this verse, at Dhritarashtra's life. We look at him, his life being a bad example because of the way that he never corrected his sons for any of their misdeeds or their greed or their lust or anything like that. But nevertheless, finally, by the advice of his younger brother, and taking it to heart, and it says, by jnana, prajna, introspective knowledge, then finally he came to reason that his brother had given him knowledge that he could himself relate to and reason about. And this we can see if such a one as Dhritarashtra, even in his as old a person as he came to be at the end of his years, is taking good advice from his brother, then this is encouragement to us that even though we know that the longer a person spends in the material energy creating habits, the more difficult it is, as this verse is even bringing out, that these ties become very difficult to cut. He broke at once the strong network of familial affection by his resolute determination. Now, on the one hand, We are reared up and trained to be showing affection for other human beings in our own familial relationship as a means of expressing our love and our position within the family that we were brought into. But his network of illusory connections was the problem, and why he had to disconnect himself from those attachments. It was his desire to be in a ruling position that kept him from wanting to correct his sons. And one would almost conclude from that it would be his fear, that is what his sons might do to remove him if he gave them. This is the manner of human beings too. If you seek to give some human beings good advice, they will want you to be stopped. Jai Shri Jagannath, Jai Baladev, Mahesha Baladev, Jai Shri. So there are great efforts being made by many little small splinter groups here and there to express strong ideas on many, many different issues that seem to be of great importance to the populace at large. And you have two sides. So one is pro and one is con, no matter what the issue is. And it is because both of these people developed independent perspectives of the subject matter at large that they are taking a position on. When you have an educational system based on absolute truth, based on that absolute truth given by the Supreme Person himself, and these truths are revealed at a very young age. I was just sharing this morning, we were associating and discussing one of the solutions of the entire society and its criminal base. And to a great extent, society is not aware of the extent that they are committing criminal acts, practically speaking, at every meal by the slaughter of a human, of a life, potential human. But we may argue every life form is potential human, but every life form that is manifest performing different functions. And so there are functions that are meant for the service of mankind that can take manifest as food, green peppers, eggplant, cucumbers, pears, peaches, plums, apple, all these things. And all these forms or expressions that another form of life is giving, bringing into this world, the fruits of it, is a means for the higher forms of life, the human beings, to be able to have substance, and with that, recognizing where this is coming from originally and honoring that, and following the guidance given by the one from whom all this is coming, and returning with gratitude, with an expression of bhakti or love and devotion, offering those things that came from the original person to the original person for the pleasure of the original person and the acceptance by the original person. So when every act of a human being is engaged in this way, so Vidura got this instruction, Vidura gave this instruction to Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra now following that, then he gets eternal benefit. And Srila Prabhupada brings out in the purport as the ultimate goal of life even. So if one so determined as Dhritarashtra was, all of his life living in disregard all the principles of the Supreme Person, and yet by hearing simple instruction of his younger brother and taking that advice to heart, then Krishna gave him the ultimate fulfillment of the purpose of human life, to find love of God and to renounce everything, all of our attachments in this material world. Srila Prabhupada has made mention in purports that his perspective on sannyas and vanapras for his disciples was that if a man is married to a wife who is also engaged in devotional service and they are assisting one another, and at the time he was making this statement, many of his disciples, married couples, were opening restaurants, going to foreign countries, opening temples, distributing books together, so many things. So when this is the case, then their attachment to their service is not material. And automatically by their attachment mutually to that service, their service helping each other is also spiritual activity, bhakti. So their association with one another is not detrimental to the furtherance of their spiritual advancement. We see examples of this. Mother Uma's parents, we saw a very good example coming every morning, the morning program, chanting 16 rounds together every morning, mutually experiencing spiritual growth together in their very advanced years. I don't know how old they are, but well past 50, I'm sure.
60.
And even though they're a married couple, because they are sharing a life of bhakti together, then he doesn't have to leave the household. His attachments are not in the household. His attachments are to Krishna because he's using the household for Krishna's service. So this is the meaning also of utility is the principle, and by using everything in our lives for the eternal purpose of promoting full knowledge of love of God, then ultimately this entire planet can be transformed by the consciousness of and mentality of the subjects of the world. So all of us have to somehow continue our existence here by providing for ourselves some form of substance. So whatever way we find of doing that, what will enable us to have the best experience possible is the consciousness we develop while engaging these physical bodies in that energy of this material world. And so if we in fact have the ability to control our minds, and herein lies the problem of society, when we can see that people are taking opposite sides, fighting against one another, it is evidence to us that nobody is knowing the absolute truth. That liberating truth, you can see when Srila Prabhupada was giving truth to those who he gave darshan to. No matter how strong and firm they previously held their beliefs and ideas, when spoken by someone who is living the truth, then it becomes evident. So knowledge becomes evident by our walking in the truth of the knowledge that we are living. So by practicing the eternal truths given to us by the Supreme Person, who is opening our eyes and revealing to us the reality in comparison to the cloud of illusion, the reality of the spiritual realm, for the most part by atheists, is being looked at and thought of as the illusory world, cartoon world, make-up, make-believe, when in fact it's just the other way around. And this is the contention that world is having now between believers of the Supreme, Almighty, all-powerful, all-knowing person of God, and those that do not believe. And so there is going to be a difference of viewpoints. Now, for one who walks in the truth and has the absolute truth, in full knowledge of the absolute truth, the truth they speak is itself the substance it describes, and taking root in the heart of those who have ears to hear, who are in positions to be able to make changes in this world, can then, by the activities that they therein engage in, by advice of the advanced souls. So we don't have to be electricians, for example, to give good advice to an electrician. By sharing the means of experiencing the highest realms of consciousness available to human beings. This is what differs from the human race and the animal species. The animal species, driven mostly instinct, is the drive of the senses of their physical bodies for eating, sleeping, mating, defending. These are all activities the physical body is demanding, and it demands upon us as well. So what we, by realizing this is a demand in everyone's life, so we are going to have to engage in some form of activity that enables us to engage in these activities of existence. But what will make the difference in our own experience while we are engaging in the acts is that consciousness, we ourselves have the ability to develop the perspective of, why am I doing what I'm doing? And this can be the difference between loving what we're doing, taking what we're doing with a great pleasure, even though it may seem menial as a task, realizing all the functions of society and seeing with an equal eye that there is a symbiotic relationship between all forms of life that exist. And within the human realm, even though we divide society into different classes, we are all depending upon one another to continue our existence here. So human beings who are developing that desire for perfection of life, for the experience of the perfection of consciousness, the highest consciousness available to the human being, This is what we're looking for when we go on vacation. When we go to visit friends and guests and relatives, we might travel 1,000 miles, 3,000 miles to visit another friend that we have known from our past. We are looking for that perfection, that ideal we have in our minds of what is happiness and what their friendship has given us in the past and what it will do for us in the future, right? This is what our friendships are based on in this world. God doesn't have a friendship with us on that basis. We can't do anything for God. But in the same sense, ultimately, God is calling us to perform activities for Him that He wants us to perform. Whether we perform those activities or not will ultimately not have any effect on God's consciousness, on God's well-being, but it will on ours. And so Krishna is giving us advice in order for our well-being, not speaking for himself. He's speaking for our good. Establishing all these principles that people are thinking are hardships. Oh, I gotta give this up. I gotta give up eating flesh. But rather than thinking in our minds of it being something we give up, look at the reality of substituting what our bodies, we are forcing our bodies to do against the way it was created. When the Creator gives advice for functions that the human body has in a way that it will function most perfectly, then adhering to that advice, we will experience the end result that the Supreme Being knows it will bring, which is why He gives us the advice. So just like these 4 regulative principles, we don't gamble, we don't engage in illicit sex, we don't eat meat, fish, or eggs, and we don't take intoxicants. All these 4 regulative principles that people are themselves thinking to be a means of experiencing pleasure, the scriptures are saying, in fact, is the cause of our suffering. And in order to bring us to a state of happiness, glorious, wondrous experience of bliss and love of God, then we abide with these 4 principles in our life, and through the guidance of the spiritual master, as revealed here, took just one time, in a very short period, in order to empower Srila Prabhupada with the knowledge and the ability, this same knowledge being spoken of, introspective knowledge. When someone gives us advice, then that introspective knowledge is that which we weigh that advice with. Is this person trying to get me to do something for their benefit, or are they trying to help me? And that's what the mind does, accepting and rejecting. So the spiritual master gives ultimately that advice that will give the end result as an eternal benefit, of which there is no comparison to any end result produced by the intermingling of the material energy that all human beings are trying to enjoy, using the senses of the physical body to do that, making themselves slaves to those senses that say, I have to have this, I have to have that, I want this taste, I want to see this, I want to hear that, These are all the mind's demands. So, if we are living in accordance to the instructions of the one who is giving us advice to follow that lifestyle which will produce an eternal result, then we no longer rely upon the senses of our body to tell us what we must do. But then we use those senses as a means of being able to refine those activities that we engage in. And we do the refining by advice of higher authority. Everything is done by the devotee, by advice of higher authority, and not given the idea we figure it out for ourselves. Yet in the world and in most even spiritual paths, people are being brought to the belief that we can figure it out for ourselves. I did it my way. I'll do it my own way. And this is all false ego. And that is the very cause of our problems. As soon as I take in my mind the belief that I, me, and mine, most important, number one to me, this is my body, this is my planet to inhabit, to take what I want of it, to use what I want of it, and go about looking whatever I want to do, then I do that. This is all false ego, and this is all being looked at by most inhabitants of the planet as freedom, as the goal of life. If we accumulate all this wealth, and we don't have to listen to anybody, and we just do whatever we want, that's freedom, that's paradise, that's heaven. But it's really not, and it is what is causing chaos, because we don't know our proper position in life, our purpose, our responsibility with these human forms that we are supposed to be engaging in. There is something for everyone to engage in. That's another thing. And if nothing else, if we can only engage in this one activity, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Guaranteed, take this singing of God's holy names with you throughout the day, no matter what you're doing. The consciousness by your mind hearing what it knows to be eternal, by its constantly being cleansed by the sound vibration of this name, the mind will gain strength in its ability to aim at the proper goal. Consciousness will become clear, pure, your purpose for being here. And every day waking up with an attitude, yes, I know why I'm here. I know what I have to do. But not only that, it is a great privilege to be able to take part in this glorious activity of expanding the ocean of spiritual bliss. That's what we do. When we take up the singing of these holy names, when we take up the purpose the spiritual master, the Guru, gives us in our daily activities, we are expanding the ocean of spiritual bliss. And it is meant to be a glorious experience. It is meant to be that which increases by giving it to others. Every day a more glorious experience than the day before. This is life. This is human life. Hardships may come, but as our ability to overcome hardships increases, as every hardship that comes is meant to make us stronger, to be able to withstand even more next time. because prove that you are eternal being. Nothing in this world can stop you from fulfilling the purpose of the eternal, supreme, sublime love. The object of our life should be the object of our aims. And this chanting of the Maha Mantra that Krishna gives us is a means by which we can find the energy to aim, because it is itself a drinking of a nectar that is of an eternal nature that far surpasses that given by that nectar drunk in the heavenly planets. Somaras, that gives tens of thousands of years of our expectations of life on this planet, the journey we're making around the sun. These heavenly planets, it takes them 6 of our months, and there is one of their days, and their night is the same length. So every year is one day. Every one of our years is a day in the planetary realms inhabited by those more elevated living entities who are being given the opportunity to enjoy in those realms because of their previous activities. But now we are actually in a more fortunate place, more fortunate than the heavenly planets. Why? Because we are being given here a means of detaching from the material energy. In the heavenly planets, they are given those bodies specifically for the purpose of being able to enjoy those bodies. Here, there's both enjoyment and suffering more so than there is happiness on this planet. So it is very easily understood by the inhabitants that, yes, this is Mrityaloka, the place of death and suffering. And by those who are in knowledge, by gaining their association, who are themselves and have been on a path of eternal liberation, they can give us the knowledge we need to also walk those steps on the path of eternity, on that eternal path that brings hope for the future, for us to be able to see the future for what it is meant to be, not what the imaginations of men will bring in destruction. But when the absolute truth of God brings restoration to the mentality He wants human beings to have towards one another, towards the things of this world, and ultimately towards love itself, which God is, the united force, the energy that we should all be moved by, which is love. And in its purest form, it is that energy that we direct at the supreme source of all love. And in that way, then, we experience love. And that experience of love that we have keeps us from wanting to bring harm or pain or suffering to any living entities, but prods us to want to give this to others. That greatest gift that love has to offer, that gift that love is itself. Once it is known, it has to be given to be experienced continuously. We have to continuously give that which has been given to us to experience it. You have to give it. So that's what Bhagavatam is revealing to us. So sublime an experience it is. Overwhelming Lord Chaitanya himself. But the fact that Srimati Radharani's name cannot even be brought up directly in the discussion of Bhagavatam without Sukadeva Goswami going into ecstatic symptoms that would break up his conversation with Maharaj Parikshit. He could go into ecstatic symptoms and not be able to gain control, which is how powerful love is. And how Krishna wants us to know that, what that is like. All the other engagements we have, his service to Maharaj Parikshit as the emperor of this world was of such great import that it took superiority over. In other words, he had to restrain. He had to be restrained from the experience he would otherwise be getting of love of God. It was so powerful. It is so powerful, this powerful force. And we see it in reading Chaitanya Charitamrita, the glorious life of Lord Chaitanya, the pastime, the glorious life of Lord Chaitanya. We can get a glimpse into what love of God will cause in us when we too are enveloped and constantly engage our senses in the acts of furthering the knowledge of this divine process of Krishna consciousness, meditation on God's qualities, the qualities of God's body, the qualities of God's teachings, the understanding they bring, and the true liberation from the bonds that these senses have otherwise got us on. We no longer live for the senses of the body. We live for the truth of pure love. And to experience it comes natural when one has dedicated their lives to promoting pure love. Just like if you work in an orchard of apples, picking apples all day, you will certainly have an apple to taste at the end of the day, an apple or two. Then what to speak if you're handling love of God? If you are taking these very literatures that are given by God himself as the supreme most teachings that he himself deems will bring us to that ultimate end that we are so much longing to experience. That taste of love of God, that perfection of God's presence in the experience, knowing what God wants for us to do. And this chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That sublime most song that Krishna gives of his own names for us to be able to taste with. These names renew the senses of the body, to give it the ability to taste spirituality, which is a completely different taste from anything the senses of these physical bodies have been able to be exposed to. So we have spiritual senses, we have physical senses. And the connection to the experience of the spiritual senses is through the singing of the names of God. And it is God's love being revealed to us, the experience that we have when we sing those names. By reminding him of his own flute playing in the recitation of these names, you provoke God to give you love. So it's not that you have to ask God to experience love, just by knowing that the recitation of the names is the solution, the answer, the experience, the consciousness we're all longing for. And He's giving it to us freely. 24 hours a day, there's no restriction. You can fill your mind with the power, the authority, the kindness, the gentleness that the chanting of these names brings. More powerful than a thunderbolt, and softer than the petal of a rose. So that's the nature of the Supreme, the Divine. Contemplating, I was sharing, as I was sharing with you, AJ, about the fact that Krishna's desire for variegatedness is revealed in this fact that in one form and expansion that He takes to create, to manifest from His body, He maintains, but he's still in a form of creating by everything manifesting from His body. So in that form of body that He is manifesting universes from, in that body, the relationship of the universes to that body is smaller than the relationship within this universe that the Supreme Lord's body is having with the planets. So the planets, in the form He is taking in this universe, are bigger in comparison to that body than the universes are to the body He has coming out of from the spiritual world. So that's a profound aspect of God's desire to experience variegatedness. But every aspect of God's personality you study or think about will give you an experience of transcendence that will give you a solid foundation of realization that these thoughts about the personality of Godhead are the highest thoughts a human being can have to experience. And so even atheists should come to realize the things we should be putting in our minds is that which elevates the human being to a status beyond the realm of the imperfections of this material world and into the realms of perfection that exist in the spiritual realm, the eternal realm, which we call Vaikuntha, where there are no anxieties, there are no disturbances, there's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no death. Joy. That's where we're getting to by the study of these ancient sacred teachings of absolute truth. And continued study of these absolute truths will bring us to that place of absolute eternity. Joy. I'll just end class there. We've been about as long as we should. Is there any comments, any questions, any realizations anyone would like to share?
Thank you, Prabhu.
John, thank you for coming. Thank you for having me into your presence, giving me your audience and taking me into your audience. John. Grantra Shrimadbhagavatam, Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai. Most pure spiritual master's teachings we have.